to me, the most effective way to convince someone to go vegan is to show that their tribe, whatever it is consistent with the vegan ethic, right? So if you talk to a Buddhist, talk about ahimsa and nonviolence and compassion for all living beings. If you're talking to a Christian, talk to them about the Christian Vegetarian Association and all the amazing Christian vegetarians out there. And the great thing is veganism is consistent with all the great spiritual and moral traditions, whether it's utilitarianism or Kantianism or rights-based thinking, whether it's Buddhism or Christianity or Judaism or Islam or Mormonism. I mean, there's actually some amazing passages from the Mormon, I don't even know what it's called, the Book of Mormon, of course, about vegetarianism and our duty to have compassion for animals. But the number one thing you have to do is show this isn't about me imposing my values on you. This is about you finding your own values. This is about you recognizing that you don't want to hurt animals. And so that's always the right general approach. But more specifically, I think we should talk to everybody about how the world is changing. People need to understand that this change is coming. And they could be part of it or they could be left behind by history. And you don't have to put it in such abrupt and harsh terms. Don't tell someone, you're not vegan, you're a loser. But I mean, that is kind of the sense you want to convey to someone, and do it in a positive way. And there's some really interesting research done by this guy, Greg Spark, who used to be at Stanford. I think he's at Princeton now. He was a graduate student in social psychology. And he's done research in what's called dynamic social norms. So telling someone that veganism is becoming the norm is a powerful way to convince them that they should go vegan. But even better than showing them that veganism is increasingly becoming the norm because we have the Impossible Burger, because all these celebrities are vegan, because more and more people, even in places like rural North Carolina, are adopting veganism, is telling them that not only are a lot of people vegan, but the numbers are increasing, that there's acceleration in that paradigm. And that's when people see that the writing is on the wall. And again, do it in a constructive, humble way. Don't make it seem like they're losers and they're not part of it. Make it seem like they're already a part of this. And so I always start by asking people, what do you care about? Like, do you care about compassion for animals? Do you want to see animals being hurt? I'm guessing you don't. And when they say it, latch onto that and say, that is awesome. Thank you so much. And whatever small gestures that person might have taken, maybe it's buying free-range meat. Obviously you and I, most of us listening to this YouTube channel are probably vegan, probably don't eat free-range meat. And it's easy to start by saying, oh, don't you know that free-range meat isn't actually humane? Don't you know that it's all scam? And that's important information for them to hear, for sure. I'll say that more than anyone because I've investigated free-range farms. I've been inside of them. I've showed the world that free-range often means you got a little, patio outside of a massive factory farm that can fit 10 chickens in a shed that has 15,000 chickens in it, and the chickens never actually even go outside, and they're marketing it as free range. So I, better than anyone, can tell you that is factually crap. It is nonsense. It's just factually false. But when someone tells me they eat free-range eggs or free-range meat, my starting point is not to tell them how stupid or wrong or ignorant they are. My starting point is to say, that is awesome. I bet you're doing that because you don't want to see animals in cages, and that's why you're a good person. And that's why you and I are on the same tribe. We are on the same team because we agree that animals in cages is wrong. And then you go to educating them about why free range isn't what we think it is. But start out by saying to someone, your values are consistent with the vegan ethic. What you care about makes you a good person. And that's why I don't even have to convince you to be vegan. You're already basically there. Your behavior's not might be there quite yet. And frankly, neither am I. I could do more as an animal rights activist than what I'm doing now. I always aspire to be a better ally for the animals than I can be. So I'm not there yet either. And so neither is the person in front of me. But the fact that you care about animals, you care about animal suffering, means you are already part of the vegan movement. Yeah, everybody in the world is a proto-vegan in my view. They might not be vegan yet. And again, I don't think you want to say that to someone because it's going to come across like saying, you're like a Christian evangelist saying, oh, you might be Buddhist now, but I know in your heart you're already Christian. They're not going to like that. So the terminology, and honestly, when I'm talking to non-vegans, I don't even really use the word vegan that much. I talk about violence against animals. I talk about, the ethic of compassion, things they already understand and believe in. Because for a lot of people, veganism is alienating. It seems like, and part of that is because of the way veganism has been branded. It's been branded as this weird dietary lifestyle. It's not an ethic, but this weird kind of diet. And so it's our job for people to understand the language they understand already and the values they already hold, that they already believe in veganism, even if they don't have the same association with the word or the lifestyle that you and I have.
So my job is to go into schools, universities, and to empower youth and adults through compassion, through empathy. And so for the most part, I generally spend the school year talking about veganism. And so I try to encourage compassion and health. I don't tell the kids what to do. I try to get them to come to their own conclusions. And one of the ways I do that is by making their own behaviors seem rather absurd and humorous. So when you can get people to laugh at their own behaviors, like drinking the milk of another species and why that actually is rather absurd and unhealthy and incredibly cruel as well, if they can laugh at their own behaviors, they're more likely to question their behaviors and then perhaps adopt something that's more humane, more healthy, and more sustainable. So yeah, so for the most part, I generally give about 500 presentations every year on veganism, as well as on animal testing, wildlife conservation, specifically looking at animals in captivity, circuses, zoos, and marine parks. And I also give presentations on cats and dogs, the importance of going to your shelter, adopt, as opposed to buying a cat or dog, buying a life, and also looking at puppy mills and positive reinforcement training, stuff like that. So yeah, I spend most of my time in schools or anybody or anywhere that somebody would want me to present to them or for them. So I give presentations also on how to give effective presentations. And so one of the things that I found to be effective is, again, you have to think of yourself as being in the audience and what would you find engaging. Part of it is just making it humorous. I mean, nobody wants to be told what to do, especially what to eat. But also, when I talk to youth specifically, I don't use the word veganism when I'm doing a vegan presentation until the very end, because I don't want their preconceived notions. And I view it as sort of like a chess match. I want to know their moves before they know their moves. I want to be 2 moves ahead of them. So I'll bring up the issues that I know that are going to come up before they can even think about it. So what about protein? What about calcium? What about, other animals eat other animals? And so again, just basically beating them to the punch. And so at the end of the presentation, like, oh, this is what veganism is. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound too bad at all. So again, you're just basically, you're aware of the questions that they're going to have, and you answer them before they can even think about asking them. But again, you also want to make it relevant. You want to make it part of everyday life. So one of the things I do when I talk about animal testing is I show them a picture that I took at a gas station. And the picture actually, you can see it pretty much in any gas station in the United States. The pillars have a warning that says, prolonged exposure to gas vapors has been known to cause cancer in laboratory animals. So I asked the kids, where do you think I took this picture? And eventually somebody would say, a gas station. And how many of you have been to the gas station before? And they all raise their hand. And I say, okay, what does this mean in terms of animal testing? In fact, what does long-term mean? What is your definition of long-term? Is it a day, a week, a month, a year, a decade? So what does it mean for the person that works at the gas station? So what does it mean in terms of animal rights and animal testing? And if I were to say to you, long-term exposure in the room you're in right now has been known to cause cancer in laboratory animals, what would that now mean to you? So you'd probably get the hell out of the room. So again, we have to make it relevant. We have to make it something that is applicable to their life right now.
The way I encourage others, at the beginning, I was much more into activism, going out to protests, going out to rodeos and factory farming places, and being involved in it. I noticed, if we didn't get the media coverage, we didn't really make any effect at all, other than we seemed to anger a lot of people. So I decided, let's go in the direction of feeding people. Instead of telling someone what not to do, I said, try this. Put that out in front of the person. So I started opening up vegan businesses and made it very affordable, because that was the other side that I was seeing, that the single mom with 2 kids couldn't shop at Whole Foods. She would just go, no way, I can't, $8 burgers and things like that. No way, I can't do that. I'm going to keep going to Burger King and McDonald's. So I wanted to offer solutions that would directly affect the person's budget along with their health and lifestyle. So I do it usually by introducing people to food. And now I do it more through letting people know that, as someone who wants to support love and sharing love and kindness and unity, that a plant-based diet is one of the ways to do it, to show your love, not just for yourself and for animals, but the whole planet. Collectively, you are showing love toward by going at least more in the direction toward plant-based, or always keeping that as a target. Can I chip away at the stone a little more? Because we know not everyone's going to go right away and just, hey, I'm vegan now, I'm plant-based 100%. They're going to chip away, and hopefully they feel better. So that's a big part of what's going on with me today on sharing it. When I opened up the vegan home delivery service, the first one was called Veggin' Out, and then Eatin' Out, and sold about 8 of them around the country between the ones I opened and the ones I sold. And each of them had different names. I always left the freedom for the owners to create their own recipes and styles. And so my way was how to get the food into people and how to make it affordable. And that's really going to be the next step. Whoever opens up a plant-based fast food chain and is able to get those numbers near Burger King and McDonald's will do amazing, because then that single mom with 2 kids is going to go, hey, I'll give it a try. And if the food tastes great, you got them. So just someone create it. We're going to be working on it. So we need everyone out there, because it will be the next, probably one of the biggest businesses out there, along with if we can get our medical profession to start being able to prescribe plant-based meals. If insurance companies would back that and say, we're going to let you prescribe that, that would be a billion-dollar industry. Plant-based medicine post-surgery or for different ailments, and they were prescribable by doctors. Holy cow, we're talking the next biggest industry in America and then the world. Just think of the value of 1,000 patients just right now in this area coming out of our local hospitals, and doctors are saying, all right, you had cancer, you had a heart attack, here's the meal plans. You're going to have to be on this for 6 months. It's taken care of by insurance, and the rest of your family gets a discount price. So instead of paying, medicine, you just cut down their food bill. Completely cut down their food bill for the next 6 months while showing them what a difference it would make. So that's really a big one there. That's going to take work, though, and we're going to need to probably work on the pharmaceutical industry, because as soon as they see something that interferes with their profit margin, so may have to make a deal with the devil, and say, come on in, we'll let you be part of this, so. As we're seeing with cannabis and all these other industries that have to have the big guys are now coming in and wanting to take over. So money seems to be king in our society, no matter what. Actually, from what I understand, and I used to deal with the Ornish program with Dean Ornish, and when I first opened up one of my food services down in Fort Lauderdale, we would deliver to all their patients that had graduated, out of his program, because there was no follow-up. So right there is an example of how it works. You come in, you get your treatment, and you're going to need the regular doctor system. So, they're going to come in and help you quickly, but the follow-up is order food. So we used to deliver to almost all their patients when they came out, as long as they were still living in that area, because many traveled down to Fort Lauderdale. So Dean Ornish may already have that going right now, where it's a program that your follow-up, covered by insurance, is plant-based prescribed meals. How awesome would that be? Get your food instead of just throwing a pill down your throat. You get like dinners, and that heals you. That's the world we should be living in. And that should be the lowest price of everything, and the highest price should be the toxic food. The food that's doing the most damage to a society. But we're so backwards with this. Organic's the most expensive, and chemical foods the cheap stuff. We're working on it, chipping away at that stone.
It's all about promoting the truth. It's all about positioning rhetoric and language and habit and culture and tradition, and really getting to the root of what the messages are behind culture, what the messages are behind tradition, what the messages are behind politics, and telling the truth about it. The language that was developed for food, meaning the set of characters that represent a word or represents the symbol of a particular food, is clever. It was clever the way that has been done. And you think of hamburger and steak rather than chopped up, mutilated body parts of a formerly living being, right? Of a parent, of someone who obviously cares.
I think the most effective medium for me to convey the positives about veganism is my own lifestyle and my own health. When I used to work in the hospital as an ICU nurse, and I would bring my own food because, the hospital cafeteria didn't really have anything to eat. And people initially would make fun of me, oh, you're eating rabbit food. But they saw that I'm a pretty nice guy and I was never sick. I was never absent. Managers would point out, how is it, you need to take your days off, your sick days off. I know you're not sick, but you need to take your sick days or you're going to lose them. And so people just saw that it's a wholesome thing, it's a healthy thing, and that I wasn't some weirdo because I was vegan or vegetarian back then, that I was a normal, good person. And they eventually came around and said, what is that? What is that in your beard? Or whatever it was after a meal. And then I like being informed about veganism. I like letting people know the answers to some of the basic questions that people have. Like, where do you get your protein? That's a huge one. And it is such a huge myth that we need animal protein in order to build our own protein, when the exact opposite is true. It's a hindrance to use animal protein to build our own, because our body breaks it down into amino acids and then builds our own protein. Obviously, if you get the little amino acids from plants, you skip all that breaking down steps, and then you just build your own. It's much more efficient, much more bioavailable. So information is really helpful. I don't have to have all the answers, because I just don't. To even be a spokesperson for veganism, I don't have to have all the answers. I like having some good answers, but I don't have to be a total scientist and have the answer to every single question. What about B12? Blah, blah, blah. And I want to live a long, happy life. Who doesn't, really? And being plant-based, vegan specifically, is really a big part of the Blue Zone strategy. It just is. They've got their own little local herbs, their own tea, plus a lot of, human factors or societal factors of a social network of friends, to live in a place that values older people, right? If you're valued and you feel good about yourself, you're likely to live longer. I mean, that's just common sense. In the same way, here where I work at Hippocrates Wellness, it isn't just the diet that helps people get well from difficult diagnoses. It is the inner work that they do. It is their state of mind. These things go hand in hand. Veganism naturally makes people more open and generous and conscious and clear. And that helps when you want to work out your stuff, your baggage, to unload. To be clear helps. And then conversely, doing your inner work helps you make choices that are more in alignment with self-love. And what is more in alignment with self-love than just feeding yourself proper nutrition and in a way that's ethical, that fits into the big picture of, the eco world that we live in. So it all goes hand in hand. I like being informed. I like to share my passion. I think that's a compelling factor also. When I'm really into it, not in a moralistic way, like, you stupid idiot, why don't you, how dare you be where you are? No, that approach never works. People will get defensive and defend their right, blah, blah, blah. But really, just to be an example. I'm like an older guy. People will wonder how I'm so healthy. And they do. They'll ask me that out loud. Wow, you don't look 71 or whatever. And then they'll wonder, what do you do? What are your secrets? And it's not a secret. I'm happy to share that. And it has become a really important part of my life and my lifestyle. I went on a trip once to the islands off of the coast of Norway, and I asked around before I went, how can I be vegan while I'm on this vacation of mine? And somebody said, you know what, they don't even have trees on that island. How do you expect to find vegetables? And I said, okay, I'd rather be hungry and stay vegan than not be vegan. And sure enough, I was in some little fishing village. They had just caught this fresh catch Norwegian from the clean waters and blah, blah, blah. And I said no to the host, insulted the host. My then wife thought I was crazy for not eating. But I was like, nope, I'd rather be hungry than not be vegan. And I'm really proud of myself. Don't get me wrong, I don't like being hungry when I'm on vacation, but I'm glad I made that choice. And I ended up, eating carrots out of the grocery store. And, I stayed vegan. It wasn't raw. It wasn't the healthiest. But I had like dark bread and carrots and, it wasn't the greatest diet. But it was still good. And I ate a lot of snow. Okay, I admit it. I ate a lot of snow on that vacation.
The word doctor comes from the same Greek root as doctrine, as teacher. And the highest role of the physician is as a teacher, teaching your patients how to live, what to eat, and how to live their lives. You're interpreting the signs and the messages that their body is giving them. But it's a matter of education is really where the deepest healing really starts. And being a natural-born teacher, that's fine with me. And so I approach my patients and my friends and family largely as a person sharing a truth that I found, that nature has shown us, that the body has shown us, and the positivity that comes from it. Diet and lifestyle based on plant foods and harmless living is a very effective therapeutic tool. People start feeling better. And so we capitalize on that. And I, as a physician, I'm able to offer, how'd you like to get off your insulin shots? How'd you like to get off you curse that bag of pills that you take with you? How'd you like to be done with your blood pressure pills? How'd you like to not wake up in the morning with sore joints? You can do that, and I'll be glad to share the techniques on how to do that. And of course, it comes down to a plant-based diet and a healthy lifestyle. And so you lead with positivity, you lead with example, you lead with the truth of it, but make it a joyous truth, not a blaming, finger-wagging truth here. There's so much good news in this. There's an open door beckoning of health and of happiness and sustainability and a loving society. It's easier to stand in that doorway and say, come this way, rather than pushing against, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. If the economics and the physiology are clearly producing adverse effects, the forests are being cut down, the people are dying from clogged arteries, then it's also the physician's responsibility to point that truth out. And I've got one very big patient called Planet Earth, and it's not doing well, and it's running a fever as the temperature is going up. It's in respiratory failure as carbon dioxide levels going up. Its arteries, rivers are getting all clogged up. The planet, if it was a person, belongs in the intensive care unit, ICU. And it's up to us to give that intensive care. And so, it doesn't matter what your cholesterol level is if you don't have a viable planet to live on. And people are so focused, what's my HDL, what's my cholesterol particle size? Meanwhile, the ice caps are melting because of our craving for animal flesh. We need to cure everything on one level, whether it's our arteries or the rising CO2 levels, by adopting the plant-based diet that we were really designed to eat. We're plant-eating hominids. We are not carnivorous apes. We have the same digestive system, basically, that our gorilla and bonobo cousins have, and they're up in their trees eating leaves and fruit. And when we eat a plant-based diet, our body just loves it. And it's up to me to keep bringing that same message, that same truth back to the person in whatever form they can handle it, or be open to it. But it's done with positivity and love. That's the most important thing, never with blame and guilt.
Working with people suffering from, a host of problems, from diabetes to heart disease, just the usual problems, high blood pressure, arthritis, you name it. I do encourage my patients to become plant-based because I know that it will help with those problems and that they will feel much better. I remember I met a gentleman who had been scheduled, actually scheduled for a hip replacement because of severe arthritis in his hip. And he attended a lecture that I did. This is up in Rochester, New York, for a friend of mine who is a plant-based physician up there, Dr. Ted Barnett. And this gentleman decided, you know what, I'm going to try this. I'm going to go plant-based. And within 2 weeks, his pain had decreased, and to the point that he was able to move and to walk so freely that when he went back to see his doctor told him, you don't need this surgery right now. You don't need to have your hip replaced right now because your level of functioning has improved so greatly. What I have found is that for a lot of people, I don't talk to them about changing their diet for the rest of their life, because for a lot of people, that sounds like too high a mountain to climb. So what I suggest is that, look, let's try it for 12 weeks. If after 12 weeks you don't feel any better, your lab results have not improved, and you're no better off than you are right now, then of course, go back to doing what you were doing before. But I know that within that 12-week period, this person is going to be feeling so much better, doing so much better, their glucose, blood lipids, and other lab work will have improved so significantly that they won't want to go back to the way they used to live. They won't want to feel as sick and debilitated as they had been feeling before.
My approach to vegan activism is through education. I think that education is the best way to help people transition to veganism, and not so much by trying to change them. I think real education only happens as a spontaneous sharing that comes from within the being. It's myself. So the primary education is educating myself so that I'm living, embodying actually what veganism is. So the primary way that I've been sharing the vegan message is through writing books and articles, and then doing lots and lots of lectures. We lived, my wife and I, in a rolling home, we call it, an RV, for 18 years, traveling all over North America, giving hundreds of events every year all over the United States and then worldwide. So really showing up and being with people and being an example of a happy, healthy vegan and just to share the good news. You know, it's really, I mean, that ancient word gospel, you know, it means literally good news. The good news that we've all been given a body that does not require any animal to suffer to get all the nutrients that we need to be healthy. And just to share that idea, and that the only reason anyone eats animal-based foods, there's only one reason anyone does it, is because people are just following orders. They're just doing what they've been told to do. And so I found that the most effective activism is to model what Gandhi called satyagraha. Satyagraha means truth power. Share your own truth. When I share this truth, it's a universal truth. When I say, gosh, you know, I'm so happy that I discovered that the only reason I was eating animal foods all those years that I did was because I was just following orders. And then I realized they were not in my best interest or in the interest of anyone. So I'm not doing it anymore, and it's fantastic. And then don't say anything more. You know, just plant that seed, because it's the seed of truth. And that seed of truth will go in to another person because it's their truth. The only reason anyone eats animal foods is because they're following orders. And their own wisdom and compassion will gradually begin to water that seed, and it will grow inside of them. And at some point, they'll go vegan. And they won't even remember who it was. That's the best. And you know, you don't have to make it about, I don't have to make it about myself. Just plant the seed wherever I go. How happy I am that I discovered that the only reason I was eating animal foods was because I was just following orders. And it's just fantastic to be free of that prison. This is the thing, I think, when we really live this, because what is veganism? It's love. That's what it is. It's love and caring, kindness, respect, sensitivity, abundance. So if I'm living in harmony with those ideals and with those principles, then every thought, word, and gesture will promote veganism. And I can be writing, I can be speaking, I can be making movies, I can be putting on cooking classes, I can be talking to people. That part is less important. What's most important is the quality of the consciousness of the being. When we work on that, then all the outer manifestations will be much more effective, I think, ultimately, because as soon as someone comes at me trying to change me, I'm going to fight back. And that's healthy to fight back. But when someone comes and actually is embodying something that is connecting with my inner truth, then naturally I'm going to be drawn to that. So this is, I think, the hidden secret in our movement, is that each one of us as activists have an obligation and a responsibility to embody veganism as radical loving kindness and compassion and caring. And that takes work. It means in all of our relationships with the people close to us to always live as a vegan with kindness and respect, not only for non-human animals, but for human animals as well.
For years, I focused on ethics exclusively, and I feel that I didn't do the best job in doing that because people wanted to say what's in it for me. So one of my favorite hobbies has been giving out tofurkey for the last 20 years. And I love when people who never thought they would want to have vegan food try it for the first time, and they look shocked that this is vegan. So it's great for them to make the connection. And I go through the spiel that this is not an apple. I'm not saying that every vegan food is healthy, but if you're looking to transition, it's wonderful to know that any craving you have today can be satisfied with a vegan alternative. So anytime there's a health fair, we can tie into the aspects of this vegan sausage doesn't have any cholesterol, no saturated fats, and I think that message is becoming more common, but when we were doing this 20 years ago, people didn't know these alternatives existed. And they've obviously come a long way as of late. Then also, if you had the environmental field, we would still show up for Earth Day and give out the vegan sausages. And again, people love hearing that they're not having as much of an impact on the environment by eating these foods. I've been part of the Vegetarian Society for 20 plus years, and I'm also the organizer of the meetup group. And I think it's so important to have a community of people that supports you. I've been blessed to have a family that supports me, but I've found out through organizing meetups that not everybody has that. And I feel like that's one of the reasons a lot of times people try going vegan, it doesn't stick because they have no support at home, they don't have anybody who gets it. Where I always had my sister and my parents, but people who don't have that, they come to meetup, and it's so nice to feel like you're at home with other people who get it. If they say, I saw a fly today and I didn't swat it, I carried it outside, you're not going to be laughed at.
I've been an activist for a long time. Over 20 years ago, I started Veg Michigan. It's one of the largest vegetarian organizations in the country. Rae and I got together and we started Veg Fund, which is doing outreach around the world. It's got a multi-million-dollar budget now. Rae and I started Santa Fe Vegan, and we also started our own group called Plant Peace Daily. And we also have a foundation now that's called Plant Peace Daily, and we help to fund other activists through that foundation. Some of the ways that I like to talk about veganism is to interject it into conversations in line at a store or you're shopping or something like that. It's so easy to bring up that subject now, especially now that most people know what a vegan is. And a lot of people are very interested in, to find out more about it. And I'm more than happy to avail them on that. I'll talk endlessly about it, but typically I like to have them asking me questions, and then I ask them questions about their lives, and just kind of reveal who I am and why I do what I do. And I was a captain responsible for training new hirees. Actually, they weren't hirees, they were in waiting, they were reservists. And I would be training them, and one of the requirements I had was that they watch a 1-hour video. It was called Diet for All Reasons, which Michael Klaper had put together probably 30 years ago. And I made them watch this video and take notes because they were tested on it every quarter. I required them to see this and study it, and I gave them also Diet for a New America to watch if they wanted to get more information. So I was able to influence a lot of the new people who were being hired onto the department. And I think it's stuck up for a lot of them because I keep hearing that many of them have gone.
I really care about sort of the education work. I see the education work as the preventative work of the symptoms that we have, and then the activism I do is dealing with the symptoms. And I like to come at it from both the prevention and the symptoms. When I'm dealing with individuals, whether it's friends, family, strangers, I feel like my job is to ask questions that get those people to ask themselves questions. So I'll give you an example. My partner JC and I were tabling at an environmental conference, and a woman came to our table and she said, you know, I'm pretty much vegetarian, but I do eat chicken. And I said, how did you choose chickens as who you would eat? What made you choose them of all the animals you could eat? And she said, well, you know, chickens. I said, I do know chickens. I said, so what made you choose them? She said, well, you know, they're stupid. And I said, I have a completely different experience of chickens. I said, tell me about your experience with chickens that led you to believe that they are not intelligent. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, just tell me about your experience with them because you think they're stupid. And she said, well, I've never really had any experience with a chicken. I said, I've had so much experience with different chickens in my life at sanctuaries, and I have chicken friends. And I said, would you like to hear about some? And she said, yeah, I would. So I just started telling her about some of my dear friends who happen to be chickens. And she was like loving the stories. They know their names. They come running through the dog door when you call their name. And I was telling her about these dear friends of mine. And that's all I did, was share these stories of amazing chickens in my life. And the woman just got quiet and she said, wow. She said, I guess I don't eat chicken anymore. And I said, you're probably going to be happy about that decision. But you see, I don't come at it with, you bad person. Why do you eat chicken? I just asked her questions. How did you choose chickens of all the animals you could choose? So that's more my kind of advocacy, is asking people questions, you know. So, you know, people like to make jokes with vegans, like, you know, jokes about things that are painful for us. And when someone does that, you know, what I say to them is, what would make you say that to me, knowing that it would break my heart? And they get to look at it. They really get to look at it. And so I'm more about, you know, asking the questions. Or somebody will say, and we've all heard this, I used to be vegetarian, or I used to be vegan. And instead of going, how could you? How could you do that? How could you turn your back on it? I say, how does that feel? To have once been committed to something and then to no longer be committed to it, is it difficult to do? You know, like I'll ask questions that just get people sort of questioning themselves and looking into their hearts and coming to their own conclusions. You know, is this really how I want to live? Is this the most compassionate choice I can make? That's not for me to decide for them. They need to come to it. They need to look in their hearts.
Well, here at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, ever since 1985, we have been strongly encouraging everybody to know about the advantages of a plant-based diet. And going vegan is great in so many ways. If a person wants to lose weight, if they want to knock out diabetes, if they want to get off their medicines or reduce them, this is really the way to go. So what we do is we do research studies to see what works and to document it, and to see how to do it in the best possible way. And then we have educational programs, whether they're in-person classes, whether they're in the media, whether they're on Zoom, or all the new ways that we have to communicate that we didn't have way back when we got started. We use all of those things. And once in a while, we go into court and we fight against the government or fight against industry to try to make sure that good health and good sense prevail.
What I find most effective today is talking to people, whether one-on-one or in a group. I think that a combination of sharing facts and information and asking questions, the Socratic method, really getting people to question their own actions and whether or not they're in alignment with values they already hold. I think that is most effective, at least for me. I also think what's effective depends on the person and what your skills and interests are. For me, I love talking to people, I love teaching, I love engaging with people, and I think one of my favorite things I have done, and I consider myself a vegan educator, so I make YouTube videos, Instagram videos, I speak in person, I teach workshops, I do protest, I try everything. But the thing that I have found most effective and that I most enjoy as well is on that educator level. When I was teaching high school a couple years ago, we had this winter break, they called it winterim class, and it was like this 3-day class before the actual school year or semester started again, where teachers could pick topics that they were interested in outside of the normal, academic spectrum and teach a class. And students, got to pick these classes. And I developed and taught essentially a 3-day vegan class. So I had, 40 students with me for 3 days. I was able to teach them about the ethics, the environmental facts, the nutrition information, and do lots of hands-on activities. So, I do these spectrum activities where you have you say statements and then, you have agree and disagree, sides of the room, and things like, I need animal protein to build muscle. And so I make that statement, and then I ask the students, how much they agree or disagree with that, and they spread out across the spectrum. And those types of activities where you're getting to see what someone else's actual beliefs and assumptions are, they get to see what other people around them think, they get to dialogue, they get to ask you questions, and then I can present information like, oh, here's a study, or look at this short video about, animal protein versus plant protein. And then in that context, getting to frame things in terms of animal rights and why, we don't need to consume animals, but doing it in a way where I'm providing the necessary information to counter myths, but really getting other people to do their own critical thinking and ask themselves what they believe, what they care about, what their values are, and what their actions should be in accordance with that. I've found that to be the most powerful because there's other types of activism where you're kind of in the moment on trying to get people to say I agree with veganism or not, or yes, I'm going to go vegan or not. But you don't really know whether people are sticking with that or not, or how much that's really, changing things. And I feel like these more in-depth, really getting people to sort of question their actions and beliefs has a bigger chance of having a more long-term impact and having people that actually, become anti-speciesist, ethical vegans and aren't just like, oh wow, I did this for health, I wanna be healthier, so I'm going vegan for this month or this year. How much is that really gonna help shift the paradigm in society to one that doesn't exploit animals versus people who maybe take longer or isn't about the immediate going vegan, but they really question their ethics and morals and maybe shift over time?
My wife Wanda and I, we have a unique family. I was married before and had a daughter of my first marriage. Lisa works and lives in New York. And I raised her as a vegan, and she's been vegan from day one. Like me, it's the only thing she knew. She wasn't raised on raw foods. I chose not to raise my child on raw foods because I didn't think it was necessary, and still don't think it's necessary. But I raised her on, she is a vegan, and has been a vegan her whole life, and has enjoyed the good health benefits that goes with that. My wife Wanda had a child of her prior marriage, a couple of years older than my daughter Lisa, and she was not raised as a vegan. When we got together, she certainly made good health choices for a while, but again, didn't have the same foundation, didn't see the world through the same lenses and the pressures of life and society when she got into high school. Did what lots of kids do. They fall into the pleasure trap, and so she has not enjoyed the good health that my daughter Lisa has. And then my wife and I raised a third child, our niece, that we had the privilege of raising. And again, she had been through a lot of things, so we didn't choose to raise her as vegan. She had gone a lot through her life. So I guess I have an overarching philosophy. And that is, Chef AJ once told me the secret of my success and why I was able to toe the line for so many years is that she said one time I should call my book that I write called Don't Get Started. So I never got started. I never was attracted to these, to my tastes were never oriented toward meat and cheese and dairy and bread and these kinds of things. So it was easy for me to stay within the confines of this diet and healthy and diet and lifestyle. But I also believe that it's kind of a personal philosophy of mine that you can't impose this diet and lifestyle either on your children. You can control what's at home. And it's kind of what we did. So when Wanda and I were raising the kids, when they were at home, they had salads, they had things like that. But we weren't the police. We recognized that you could have neurotic children if you tried to condemn them for the choices they made. You hope that you plant seeds. We took them to NHA conferences. We exposed them to documentaries and tried to educate them as best we could. Plant the seeds, and they could make their own decisions. And even when I got married to my wife Wanda in 1991, she didn't know anything about vegetarianism. She didn't know anything about Judaism. She didn't know anything about this. And I didn't think it was my right to impose that upon her. People have the right to make their own choices, just like they do about religion. I'm not a proselytizer. I've never been that way about politics or religion. If somebody asks me, like in this interview today, what I think about health, I'll talk to them all day long. If somebody doesn't, I'll talk to them about the Cleveland Indians or the Cleveland Browns, or Democrat or Republican politics, or constitutional law, or civil rights, or the environment. Those are things I'll talk about, but if somebody's interested, I'll talk all day long. I don't think you can impose your health philosophy on somebody else. Fortunately, and my great fortune is that I planted those seeds with my daughter Lisa, and they have stuck. They've taken root, and they're pretty strong. She knows what to do when she gets sick. She leads a pretty good life. And my wife Wanda, she founded at True North Health in 2011. She had her aha moment. And now we share this lifestyle. But I think she would say, if she credits, one of the things that's allowed it to be easy is that I gave her the opportunity to find her way herself. I didn't insist, I didn't condemn her from eating health food, junk food. She was vegan, but ate the Amy's pot pies and the vegan cheese pizzas and things like that. But that's okay. That's her right. Who am I to say what religion she should follow or what diet she should follow? I loved her because of who she was, not because of what she ate. So it's an overarching philosophy that I have about life, and it applies to my diet and health. I've been a public citizen all my life. I've been involved in school boards and Playhouse and legal aid and very much a public citizen. But my diet and lifestyle, people are aware of it, but I don't wear it on my shirt sleeves. They'll see when we go out to dinner, I'll have my baked potato and steamed vegetables, but I don't make a big deal about it. This is what I do, and I respect what I do just like I respect what they do. And I think that's an important lesson that parents need to understand. There are so many people in this health movement that they get better and they become zealots for this way of living. And there's probably nothing that can be more nauseating sometimes, and nothing that can put people off more than being an evangelist for this way of living, rather than being an example for this way of living. And I've always found that I've been a lot more persuasive with people by telling them this is what I do and this is what I think, rather than telling them that this is what they should do. You do it by example. And I think, again, that's something that applies not just to health, but to life in general.
I feel that certain people in the vegan lifestyle, sometimes they can be very, very hardcore on how they approach certain people. So I know that we all have our own journey going into this lifestyle. So Meatless Mondays is something that's been going on for years, but I do something called Meatless Monday Movement, where I tell people that if you have 53 Mondays within a year, good health comes through accumulation, because you accumulated bad health by doing the same thing over and over again. So how do you accumulate good health? You start with certain days and you implement those healthy habits within your life. I call it one day at a time with urgency. And you have to understand that you are facing diabetes, you are facing heart disease, you are facing impotency, you are facing constipation. There's so many different things that are happening to your body because of what you're eating. So the way that I am able to get across to my viewers is that I put myself in their shoes. I've been there before. So knowing that, I don't just push it on them, but again, I'm also an example being the example is the best way. You can talk all you want to, but people have to actually see you doing it, and they have to see the results in order for them to be like, hey, that's something that I can actually get into. So I use Instagram, I use Facebook, I do a little bit of YouTube, but my biggest platforms are Instagram and Facebook. And then I do an event called Vegan Vibe Music Series, where we bring a lot of people together and give people and show people about the vegan options.
Well, I spend a lot of my time online, doing online social activism. And so I encounter a lot of people who are negative towards veganism or questioning it. You know, I try not to be negative, I try not to criticize them, but just present to them the reasons why being vegan is a good thing all around. You really can't force them to do anything. You're just presenting them with the information and urging them to do the right thing, which is to be vegan. I mean, I do also go to animal rights events and pro-vegan events and leaflet and well, with our organization, we do a lot of tabling, and that includes information on how to go vegan, how to be vegan. So a lot of public outreach. Animal rights has been happening for really a movement for the last 40 years or so. And there was so much resistance to it before, but in the past couple of decades, it's really gained respect, social respect. People in the public have realized that, you know, animals are being harmed needlessly, and they relate to mammals, and they are increasingly relating to birds. But up until the past couple of years, really, there's so much doubt even that fish are sentient beings, even that fish are animals, and the law excludes fish under a lot of animal protection legislation, which is why we began Fish Feel, why we started Fish Feel, to try to educate the public on that fish are sentient beings. And there's so much scientific evidence now that fish are sentient, that they do feel fear and pain and lots of other emotions.
My activism, my advocacy has really changed over the years. Last summer, I don't know, I had some free time. That was unusual. I don't have much of that. But I just decided to Google my maiden name. Now, I was married in 1977, so any use of that name goes back really far. And I found references, some newspaper articles to demonstrations and things that I had done back in the early 1970s. So at that time, I was out on the street a lot. I was protesting and picketing and carrying signs and writing letters to representatives and writing letters to newspapers. When my daughter was born in 1983, that part kind of slowed down a little bit, and I became more interested in writing and speaking and getting the word out in a more concentrated way to people who were open to hearing it. And at this point in my life, I'm writing, I'm speaking a lot on Zoom, obviously, in this day and age. And also I do a podcast, which is absolutely wonderful because this is a way to bring in every aspect of the vegan lifestyle. Now, when I started my podcast, it's called Main Street Vegan. That's what a lot of things that I do are called. Back in 2012, I think there were 6 vegan podcasts, and now there are probably 300, which is wonderful. We need all the vegan outreach we can get. But what I find is that I need to be a little bit more focused. So I'm now saying the Main Street Vegan Podcast, the spiritual and spirited vegan podcast, because for me, as I said, the spiritual part of being vegan is really important. That's not going to be important to everybody, but if I can reach the people for whom it is, I'm going to have more effective outreach.
I encourage others to be vegan by living by example, to try to be the best specimen of a vegan I can be, to spread information in a benevolent fashion and have them realize what their choice is, the difference that they make. We can all make a difference just by the simple choices that we make in our lives. So many of us go through life wanting to make a difference, but not really doing anything about that. This is something you can make a difference in that will help yourself, the animals, and the planet. I've been a personal trainer for over 20 years to show that you can maintain your weight and muscle mass through a vegan diet, that you can be healthier and you can do something that will align with your values. I mean, most people don't believe in animal cruelty. If you hear about a dog that was, beaten by a neighbor, most of us are incensed about that. Why don't we extend it to include all animals, not just dogs and cats and the animals we call pets? I do leafleting. I have in the past done some protesting. It's been a little difficult with the whole pandemic. I do things online. I've mentored many people over the years, mostly from a distance. So I really try to get the word out in a way that feels comfortable for me, that I feel will be effective to everyone. In my life, like people would see me at the gym or out, when I'm put together, and they'd be like, "You look great, I can't believe." And then a lot of times, I'm a good bit older than they are, and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" And that to me is the perfect lead-in. And I'm like, I don't eat animals. And then of course, where do you get your protein? Where do you get your calcium? Where do you get your God only knows what?
There are times when I will go out with coworkers and friends, and they may question my plant-based diet and ask me questions, and I will try to answer them to the best reasons that I know why it's healthier to be plant-based. But a lot of times, they will give you some a little bit of a confused look, and plus they will also give you a little hard time at saying, how can you get any protein from eating plants? And of course they just think it's always lettuce and that's about it, lettuce and tomatoes and salad. The largest land animals, such as the rhinoceros, the elephant, the giraffe, the hippo, and even the gorilla, are the strongest, animals on Earth. And so they're all vegetarians, vegans, plant-based. So if they are that strong being plant-based, and it says that in Genesis 1:30 for the animals and in Genesis 1:29 for man, that this is the healthiest diet for human beings.
How my activism's evolved, I would say that it's evolved a lot, and it's kind of probably morphed into what it's more than likely going to be for the foreseeable future here, working with Direct Action Everywhere. And when I first started, I was really into like one-on-one change and like connecting with individuals and trying to get other individuals to quote unquote go vegan. And I don't really see that as the most effective way to bring about change in the world. I see this as a systemic issue, and I think that we need to be attacking the systems, governments and political leaders and these corporations, and that we shouldn't be focusing too much on this kind of go vegan narrative, because I see it as bigger than that, and we can there's actually allies that aren't necessarily vegan. For example, last year I was part of a team that exposed this horrific ventilation shutdown, torture practice at this company in Iowa that was basically boiling pigs alive. And it was made possible by a guy that worked for the company that was driving the pigs around that blew the whistle on it. And without this guy, we wouldn't have had this investigation. We wouldn't have had an article by Glenn Greenwald, Pulitzer Prize winning Glenn Greenwald. So I think that this kind of purity campaign to get individuals to go vegan is not the correct means about bringing the change that we want. And I think that we need, activists more than anything, or at the very least people supporting people doing investigations, people doing uncomfortable protests, people doing acts of civil disobedience. We look back at past social justice movements, whether it be civil rights or suffragettes fighting for women's voting rights. It wasn't until with the women's voting rights, for example, it wasn't until they literally started blowing shit up, literally blowing mailboxes up and blowing houses up, until their message started to come across to the political elite and the establishment. So to think that this animal rights movement is going to be any different than any movement in the past is silly, I think, to me. So I think it's a social justice issue, and we should be treating it as such.
There's so many different ways of different advocacy. So one is I'm a part of a program called Vegan Outreach, is the organization I work with, also the Animal Save movement. and I manage a vegan food aid program. And I work with Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. I also work with Black Women Farmers of LA, the LGBT Center South on MLK, and Black Women for Wellness. And some of the work that we do is we provide plant-based groceries and hot meals for different communities with nothing expected in return, except for them just to be able to try amazing plant-based foods on us. And it's been a wonderful program. It started because of the pandemic, but now it's evolved into just providing these communities with nutritional support. And it's been amazing. Also, my mom is now drinking almond milk, which has been a beautiful evolution to watch because for so many years she kept saying she needed milk. And I'm like, you don't need milk, but she's doing that on her own. She follows my journey constantly. Thank you, Mom. And she's always listening and watching what I'm doing. And so I really appreciate her for that. And thank you for now consuming almond milk instead of cow milk.
One of the things I find most effective in helping people become vegan is just simply being a role model. We look at how we can share recipes with each other. That's a key, because we're always looking to see how we can eat. And so I share my breakfast, lunch, and dinner recipes with people. I really try to role model as the owner of a fitness center, staying fit and healthy, making sure we look at blood work and we look at the gut microbiome and those aspects, and making sure we have optimal health for our entire life cycle. Number one, I try to be a role model, and I think that's what we can all do, is just help each other to really see how important it is that we become plant-based, whole food vegan.
I think mostly just by example, just by being who I am. I'm not somebody who tries to kind of sell veganism that much. I think it's more of a just kind of lead by example for me. Yeah.
And wouldn't you say maybe your work with the sanctuary is also?
Yeah. I'd say the animal-centered design that we do here at the refuge, where we try to think about what spaces, both inside spaces and outside spaces, can help animals be who they really are and live their best life. I think that probably has an impact, although it may be hard to measure.
I am vegan, and so in hanging out with my family, there's always got to be vegan options. So that's one way to encourage others to become vegan. Yeah, that's kind of the only way right now. I try not to push people, because I feel like I've done that before in the past, and I'm talking specifically maybe family members, but what's made some of my family members more open to vegan options is by having family be vegan, and so that there's those kind of options there, or when we go out, there's consideration for us. And I also promote veganism with my business and social media.
I encourage others to be vegan through community efforts I do. I go out and do food justice campaigns. I go out and give away food in communities, sampling flavorful vegan food. I call it flavorful, F-L-A-V-A. Because when you go to communities that are disproportionately impacted by chronic diseases, which are traditionally Black and brown communities, indigenous communities, and communities that are poor, you have to go with flavor, because food in those communities is about an experience, it's about family, and it's about flavor, because I can go all the way back to slavery on why that is. We had to make scraps taste like fine dining. So in communities of color, food has to taste good. So I go out and I do flavorful vegan food in communities of color, and I give that out. We go in communities where, again, we're having major issues with food health disparities and food insecurity. And I go out and do that. I do food talks. I go out and do demos in communities and just do a lot of free recipes. And I'm a cookbook author, and I just teach people how to eat better. So that's what I do to try to make an impact on community health.
So I think the best way for us to encourage
people to be vegan is just by giving them vegan food, because I think it's the biggest roadblock for a lot of people. Like, I feel like the roadblock should be moral or ethical, and once you make that decision, it should be easy. But a lot of people think that they can't do it, and the only way for them to know that they can is to try vegan food and see that it wouldn't be the end of the universe.
Yeah. And a lot of the times, if people just eat vegan food often enough, they'll get used to the idea that it's just food. It's not any different.
So since we cook for a living, we get to experience so many people trying vegan food for what they think is the first time. And a lot of people will say things like, I've never had vegan food my entire life before, I've never eaten it. And we'll just be like, well,
have you never had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a salad or French
Oreos.
fries or anything? It's like, you've never had vegan food, really? But people have this idea of what vegan food is. So many cultures have dishes that are just vegan. You don't have to change them. There's nothing fake or substitute about it, especially with Mediterranean food or Thai food or Indian food. So the concept that vegan food is fake food is one of the things that you have to
break past.
Yeah.
Because people focus too much on substitutes for meat and substitutes for cheese, and they feel that it's lacking because they never think of it as something that just is. It's not like a replacement for something else.
Yeah, especially with cheese. Like, if you have nothing but dishes with vegan cheese, you're going to be like, oh, vegan food is terrible. But if you eat dishes that never needed it in the first place, then you're not missing anything.
And there's so much flavor you can get from vegetables and fruits that people don't think about, because a lot of people are just used to vegetables that have been put into a pot and boiled until they're literally killed and there's no flavor left and it's just mush.
Or it's just a side to the main meal instead of being the main meal.
So I think that's our way of trying to help people go vegan, is just by giving them food and having them experience what vegan food could be. And a lot of times we don't even tell people the food is vegan until after they try it, because people have such a internal bias against the word vegan and what it means.
Yeah, and if we're selling food at a booth at a festival and we have falafel sandwiches and hummus, and it is vegan, but nobody thinks of it as being vegan.
So we've had a lot of people who are surprised later when you tell them it's vegan, or sometimes you get people who are mad at you, like, you tricked me into eating vegan food. How could you do that to me? Which is just silly.
Yeah, but eventually it kind of changes people's minds. And I think that's a better way for us to try to convince people to be vegan, because we're not very good at talking to people or persuading them through words.
No.
Good food. So you got to bring them something familiar. So again, getting people to cross over the threshold. Humans have been eating this way since the beginning of time, right? So when you take their food away from them, they're not happy, right? Or they're just not going to cross that threshold when they're just eating string beans and Brussels sprouts and lettuce and all that stuff, and that's kind of what the perception that they get. So when you bring to them something like we have, from the meatballs to the burgers to the chicken parm, that gets them to kind of cross that threshold and try that food. And when they do, they're kind of thrown for a loop. They can't believe that food could taste like this in the vegan industry.
So what I like to do to encourage people to become vegan is make vegan dishes. I bring it to work. Here, try this. This is vegan steak. Tastes just like steak, doesn't it? You know, try this chickpea tuna. Oh, wow, it tastes just like tuna. And I showed them that, hey, you can eat a lot of the same things, but you just got to be able to adjust your taste buds. So what I do is I like to give them examples, because a lot of them, I'll show them pictures. Hey, bring me some of that. Let me see what that is. And that's what I do.
Well, I'm not an evangelical about veganism, but having the restaurant, we obviously want to introduce people to good food, a good night out, having fun. We do birthday parties and so forth here. They've had a plant-based meal and it was satisfying and enjoyable. It matters to us that people are exposed to a plant-based diet, plant-based meal. You can have it at a restaurant, you can prepare it at home, substitute a few ingredients, and voila, your food is vegan. What we try to do here is show people that you don't need that protein in the middle that's from an animal. So our goal is to have a plant-based meal that gives you the same satisfaction, but you're not eating some dead animal.
We hope that that becomes important to our guests so that they will carry that into their own lifestyle. Hey, maybe I'm not going to eat so many hamburgers. I'm not going to have so many meat-based, animal-based meals. I'm going to substitute a few plant-based meals in there. In that respect, what we're doing is we're informing people and, maybe slightly changing people's behavior. It's funny, when we first did our marketing materials for the restaurant, you probably want to know why it's called Darbster. We had a dog named Darby. She was a rescue that Ellen had adopted. And we had the URL Darby and Darbster. And so when we bought the property here and decided to build the restaurant, we said, well, let's call it Darbster, because we got Darbster.com, which was great because we didn't have to use a name like vegetarian kitchen or vegan kitchen or whatever terms were available. Then it was Darbster. So people was like, well, it's a restaurant. What does that mean? Why do we call it Darbster? And we didn't use the term vegan originally in our materials. We said vegetarian because it was softer and it didn't alienate people as vegan did back in 2009. Of course, now everything uses the term plant-based and it's widely accepted and we don't shy away from it at all. But yeah, early on we were a vegetarian restaurant.
Well, the way in which that we did it, we opened up Juice and More Vegan Cafe and Natural Marketplace so that we can bring what we felt inside, externalize it so that others can also participate in that. So with us being open now for over 3 years, we have been able to bring food consciousness to Little Old Henderson. And that is something in which that has definitely been blissful.
In my personal life, I try not to advocate too loudly. I like to take a more subtle approach and be an example, be the kind of person that other people might want to be like. So I don't get in people's faces. I don't get mad at them for not understanding the way I see the world. I allow them that space. I allow them to come to me and ask questions. And it turns out that that's actually been really effective. A lot of my friends have gone vegan. I do then advocate professionally as well, and that's a slightly different stance. While I approach people non-judgmentally and I don't tell them what they should or shouldn't do, I do try to arm them with information and with a perspective that might help them see why being vegan is a better choice for them, for animals, for the planet, for all of the people involved in the system who are oppressed and exploited.
Yes, that's my favorite question. Okay, so I usually kind of shut up and not tell people and let them, if they're clients, I let them come and train with me and I'll write them a nutrition plan that is mostly plant-based, which will say like, if you want, substitute tofu for meat, not the other way around. So it's tricky, so, right? Like most coaches, they were like, if you are vegan or vegetarian, substitute like this fish for this seitan or for meat replacement. I do the other way around. So they're like, okay, so maybe they try it, then they're more likely to try it. And then all of the recipes on my blog are vegan, obviously. All of the recipes that I post are vegan. But I don't really do activism in a sense that like I don't go protest anywhere. I don't go on a strike. I don't go yell at people. I did probably year one because I was really upset that nobody told me that I was doing something wrong for years and years. And I was like, man, if I tell other people, then they for sure, like their eyes are just going to open. They're going to say, thank you. Oh my gosh, yes, we're doing something terrible to ourselves and to everybody else. Wonderful. Let's fix this. But that didn't happen. People were just kind of like, can you stop? Like, this is annoying. Like, live your life and I'm going to live my life. So I stopped. And right now, all I do is, I guess, I try to lead by example and not really preach, but just practice and let others observe. And then if they wonder, like, how the hell am I getting stronger every year? And how do I look better as I age? Most people say that I look younger, so I hope that's true. If that's true, then I guess most people are interested in the things that I do. Like most of my clients ask me what I eat, even if they're not vegan. And then the more they work with me, the more they're inclined to try the things that I do that are effective for me. That's how they kind of get onto the bandwagon. I guess I don't only train vegans. That's another thing. But when people have, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, obesity, or if they're pre-diabetic, I give them some suggestions and ask for them to go and check with the doctor and test their blood. And then we can make some changes in their menu, and if they see improvement, then it's a no-brainer for them, right? We're all pretty selfish creatures, so if they see improvement, they want to stick to it. So I've had, I think, not most, but maybe 70% of my clients who are not vegan at least try being plant-based for X amount of time, and some of them stayed vegan for life.
What I find to be most effective is talking about my experiences actually going inside of factory farms and slaughterhouses, because that's not something that a lot of people have ever even seen, much less actually done. And so I'm fortunate to have had these experiences, some of which resulted in felony charges. And that's actually something else that I would often talk about. This is especially true when I did an investigation of Smithfield in 2017 that resulted in 4 felony charges and 60 years potentially in prison. And just telling people that I was facing that all for removing 2 piglets who were probably going to die inside of this massive factory farm in Utah just was so outside of people's experiences that it just sort of would make them stop for a second. And so that's one reason why we do challenge the legal system, is we want to show these extreme, totally not intuitive results from doing certain actions so that people can see how bad things are for the animals. And with any luck, that can be an impetus for them to change and then join the side of the liberationists. With regard to family and friends, it's very challenging, and I don't know that I've always been the most compassionate communicator with my family, because I tend to just be very, very honest. There aren't a lot of people where I can be like, yes, this person is an animal rights believer because of me, but there are key moments that I think that I've contributed to as far as moving people along in their consciousness. What's been effective is showing people what I've actually seen and what we've documented inside of factory farms and slaughterhouses, because when people realize that this is the reality, it changes their thinking in a way that's a lot more profound than me just describing it or communicating to them that this is a really important issue to me. When they can actually see it with their own eyes, then I think that's a very, very powerful step in terms of changing consciousness.
I let them ask me questions. If they find out I'm vegan either because they ask me or because, let's say I order something at a restaurant and I say, oh, but no cheese. So a lot of times something like that'll happen. They'll say, oh, are you vegan? And say, yeah. And that's it. And I just leave it at that, and we just go on with our evening. And now they have an opening, and they can talk to me about it. When people ask me about it, we can have real conversations. If I tell them about it, and I talk to, and again, this is my experience, if I tell them about it and talk about why and all that stuff without them asking me, it tends to hit a dead end at some point. It tends to go nowhere. It has to be on their terms. And if it's on their terms, they feel comfortable, they feel relaxed, and they want to ask questions. Sometimes they don't want to ask questions. That's great too. I find for me, it's most effective to know, have information, have resources available, have all that stuff at my disposal, and let them start that conversation. And it's more of a passive way of dealing with it. It's more of being the example. I find that's really the most effective way to get those conversations going and have lasting conversations and follow-up conversations. And that's what I feel makes the biggest changes. I know some people take a more aggressive stance, and that works for them, that's fine. I'm much more comfortable with doing it this way, and I find that other people are more comfortable with me doing it this way. And especially with the feeling of like, I'm not here to convert you. You know, I've dealt with people for all kinds of different things where you can tell they want to convert you in some reason, whether it's some sort of political thing or an activism thing or a religious thing. I've had lots of conversations with people, and as soon as I get a sense that they're there to sell me something more or less, I'm done. Like, I don't want to hear it. I don't care if it's right and true. I don't want to hear it. And that's how I feel a lot of people are. So I don't do that. I say, hey, my door's open if you want to ask me. If you don't want to ask me, no problem. We'll just get another beer and hang out, you know. And that's the way I like to handle it.
Encouraging people to be vegan. It's different for each person what's going to kind of pull them in a little bit. Some people it is, look at what's going on in the environment. Can you at least help that way? Cutting back in what you're doing. And another really effective way for me a lot is not, and I tried this at first, was starting to lecture people. Do you know what this is? Do you know what this does to you? Do you know what happens when you drink cow's milk? This is like glue. And people didn't like to hear it. They'd tune me out. So I think if you get people to add in things, start trying vegan, start seeing all the adventure. And this is what partly drew me in as a chef is, this is new. Some of the different ways people are working with vegetables. And something, for me, I've been a chef. I've eaten at a lot of, growing up, I was fortunate. I was eating at a lot of nice restaurants and been exposed to a lot of things. But still, I came to Florida. It was like, here's fruits I've never tried before. I've never heard of. Here's vegetables I've never even seen. Let me try this. There's so much experience. There's so much variety. So getting people to add in and try things, and things start shifting. You start going, wow, I do like this. And then they start dropping out other things. Your tastes start to change, as I've said. So to me, it's really add this in. Here's some of the health benefits for some people, and we see this here. They wait until they have heart disease. They wait till they have cancer. They wait till they have diabetes to start shifting. Change the way you eat, and you can prevent so much of this. You can help your body, help itself, and really, that's for a lot of people, it takes that motivation of health. So it's kind of knowing the person, talking to them a little, saying what's going to do it for that person. That it really helps people shift and become vegan. And it doesn't have to be a hardcore at first approach, but as I said, for me, at a certain point you'd say, oh, and some people still resist and say, you're being difficult if you go to a restaurant. Why do you have to be difficult? Can't you just eat this? And you have to say, be persistent, say, I'm not being difficult. I'm just doing what's right for me. Sometimes you even have to say, my doctor told me this is what I should do. You're your own best doctor. From there, you get opinions, you get help. Sometimes people say, are you allergic? What's the problem? So it brings up challenges for other people in them, and sometimes they want to challenge people who are vegan and pull them down. But stay the course and be the example, is what I say.
For me, activism is really just a part of my everyday life. Living here in the sanctuary, we're always taking pictures and videos and, posting things to social media and trying to, really show people, what it's like to live with cows and pigs and turkeys and chickens and, all these amazing animals. We really try to show their personalities and tell their stories and, let people see them the way that we see them, which is these very, unique individuals who, have very different personalities and, wants and desires and needs and are curious and loving and want to spend time with their family. And so, we try to capture that as much as we can and just share that with other people. That seems to be, a really powerful form of activism. I think that, when people make that connection between, their food and the animal that comes from, and they see that, they have been following the story of, Jenna, the calf, who's now, a full-size cow, and she's 2.5 years old, and, she would be, halfway to being slaughtered on, a dairy farm. And so, they make that connection, and, while it might just be milk at the store, they don't want to hurt Jenna, they wouldn't want to eat Jenna. And so, making that connection to their food, I think impacts people a lot when, they get to know an individual on that level. So that's, for me, I think the most important thing I can do is, for these animals is to, be able to tell their stories and try to, capture them, the way that they truly are.
We've noticed that people around the world feel like our animals are a part of their family. And, a lot of times it's not people that are vegan, but all of a sudden they have Jenna feeling like, someone that they know so well. And then the power of knowing her so well sort of shifts their mind. Just, I think it was yesterday, we got a comment on a YouTube video of Jenna that said, sorry, Elvis is interrupting me here. A comment on one of our YouTube videos saying, I adore Jenna, I'm definitely going vegan. And so it's just knowing that just telling their stories has that power is definitely a huge part of what we do.
I encourage others to be vegan by pointing out really honestly and clearly what's happening I'll say, do you know that you are eating a dead animal? Do you know? I'll just try to educate them and just try being really frank about it. I know that doesn't work for everyone, but it has worked for a lot of people, and my sisters are vegan. A lot of people that I know are vegan now. Another way I encourage others to go vegan is I took the Liberation Pledge in 2020. That's when there was ventilation shutdown, when the pigs were being roasted alive at the Iowa farms. That inspired me to take the Liberation Pledge. And since then, I have not sat at a table where animals have been served. I will not sit where the body of an animal is being eaten. And that's actually been really positive for me, because a lot of my family members have actually been encouraging me to stand up for what I believe in, even if they don't believe in it too, and they'll have a vegan meal with me. And I thought that it would be maybe more scary to take the Liberation Pledge, but it actually was a really positive form of activism, and it's made a lot of people think about their actions.
Primarily, when I'm talking to others about becoming vegan, I have found that at the refuge, meeting animals and learning their stories and seeing them face to face is one of the most effective things we can do, because we grew up in a culture where we're very separated from the animals that are in the grocery store. We'll go to the store and they'll just be body parts wrapped in plastic, and there's no association with who or what that animal was. So when people are confronted face to face with a turkey who's trying to sit in their lap, or a sheep who wants to snuggle with them and starts to learn that these animals would have been the food that they eat, it's making some of those connections for the first time, but it's also putting that individual front and center so that they can't ignore and they can't look away. And so that is extremely powerful. And I've witnessed many times people saying, well, I'll never eat meat again, I'll never eat turkeys again, because of those animals' ability to just be themselves and be present and share that.
I have a problem trying to influence other people. I don't think it works. I think we have to teach by example and not by what we say, by what we do. So over the years, I have found that my son, my daughter, and other family members have seen me be vegan, and they respect it. And I see them ordering vegan food now when we're out, and it's very important for more people to be vegan. It's very important, but I can't really hustle people about it, because I think everyone is on their own journey. They have to find their own way. So I think the example is the best way to do it. Not just talk about it, but to see how you live, and that you are the same on the inside as you are on the outside. It's not just lip service. And we are genuine. There's just no way we're going to slip up or not be vegan one day or have something that's not vegan. I never could. It would not pass my lips. And my kids see that conviction. And even my friends now sometimes say, let's go to a vegan place. But I'm not talking about it that much. They just know I'm vegan, they respect it, and maybe I should be more. I can be active in a group, but with my people, my friends, I feel it's not fair to force my opinions on them. Well, when I have people come to my house, and I'm a pretty good cook, I make a wonderful vegan spread, like really good. Many, many different dishes, different flavors, looking so good and colorful, and it's all vegan, and people love it. So that's one way I try to encourage it, and people want the recipe, and even my son, who is a professional chef, he's incorporated many of these recipes into his repertoire. I do social media, like every day I post something vegan on Facebook. Don't get much response from it, but it's there and you don't know who will see it. And if I can convert even one person will see it and change their minds, just, try it for a day. I was watching Morning Joe earlier last week. That's like MSNBC. And they had a vegan section on it. And that made me feel really good. So I told everyone to watch it. And there are also many politicians vegan now. I just love them. Like Adam Schiff is vegan. And Cory Booker is vegan. Eric Adams too, yeah. So these people, I would support them politically as well because they're on the right way. They're caring people, they're gentle, their soul is gentle. They will care for people as well as the downtrodden animals. So the main thing is I cook very, very nice vegan food and invite people, and I post something on social media every day, 2 or 3 pieces. I attend conferences and people ask me what was it like. So then I have a chance to tell them what it was like and tell them about my vegan friends. How they're just very gentle souls and very kind. Not, how they call them, terrorists. We are not terrorists. We are just gentle souls trying to walk gently on the planet.
That's been a learning experience for me. Initially, I think like most people, when I saw Earthlings, when I went to the talk, when I made the connection, I was angry. I didn't understand how people could consume meat or kill animals or commodify them as we do or use them for entertainment. I started taking some classes in psychology, and there's a Polish psychologist, Kazimierz Dabrowski, who talks about theory of positive disintegration. And one of the things he mentions is most people are very much fixated on habit and convenience. And this is an approximation, but 10 to 14% will change overnight, but the rest will make slight changes. And I think there's just many different ways of approaching people. For some, it might be the environment. For some, it might be them being used in circuses. I've learned through my own family, which is the most challenging, religion. Hindus, when you bring up dairy, we're the largest consumers of dairy. And but Hinduism ascribes to ahimsa, which is nonviolence, but they don't make the connection with the cows. So with all of the religious pujas and kathas and things that we have, so when you offer food to the god, one of them is a drink, that's yogurt, panchamrit, which comes from, and we revere the cows, but is so paradoxical. And so I'm learning there's a lot of cognitive dissonance. There's not just one way. You really have to assess the individual and see what they're open to and how much they want to know and what might reach them. I have friends who are environmentalists, and when you share with them, in terms of like methane gas that's produced from cows, etc., that might have an impact. There are those who love elephants, and then they learn about what happens as circuses, so there are different ways. If anything, I've learned there's not one way of reaching out to people, and you definitely can't preach or present them with statistics and facts. I've certainly learned that. So for someone who shows some kind of interest, I have packets at home of like starter kits, how you can begin. So rather than doing all the research and homework on my own, I give them the leaflets I've collected.
I found the most effective way to encourage others to open up to this lifestyle is to speak from my own personal experience of just how much health I've experienced through shifting my way of eating. And generally when I come from that place, you can't argue with that, right? Versus kind of coming from a more forceful, you have to try this, you gotta do this, because usually that's kind of what makes people feel a little more defensive about what they're doing in their life. So I find that really speaking from personal experience really helps inspire people, find that innate inspiration inside of themselves to maybe try something new. And definitely, you know, the way that we encourage people to eat whole food plant-based, not only in our practice, but also in our community and in our relationships here, is to just continue leading by example and showing people how fun and delicious and enjoyable and satiating whole food plant-based eating is. Of course, we have our professional teaching where we really dive into the nitty-gritty science so that people can really understand physiologically what is transforming in their body when they eat this way. Because from that understanding, people generally, you know, it's kind of common sense to them at that point. Like, oh yeah, I want to live in that way. I want to support my health in that way. But yeah, definitely through being the example and also through education is really how I like to support people in making that shift.
So I encourage others probably more by example. I don't bring it up unless I'm asked, but certainly in my job as the executive director of the National Health Association, I plan conferences and I plan cruises and travel, and I'm on social media a lot, so a lot of people are contacting me and asking me questions. I fortunately have a great referral network that I can provide people other resources if I don't have the information they're looking for.
I encourage others to go vegan by walking my walk, talking my talk. I encourage others to go vegan through my professional practice, of course, through my work as a naturopathic doctor and lifestyle medicine focused. At the same time, I really understand and respect everyone's own unique journey, and you know, there's this kind of principle in veganism of nonviolence, and I think that vegans can be violent in how we might approach and force people into this way of eating. So I try to avoid that. I try to avoid the ideological stuff and just kind of recognize that this is the best way to eat and live, and everyone is kind of coming into this lifestyle slowly in their own time. So having that unconditional compassion, respect, and acceptance of people's kind of journey, that's how I encourage others.
I enjoy being an activist because it's part of my personality. I like to do public speaking, and that's my contribution, the way I feel that I can do it. My wife hands out cards to everybody she meets about veganism. But for me, I like to participate in gatherings and share my experiences. And if they resonate with other people, that makes me happy. And if they don't, I'm not going to judge them because they have to live their own karma out. And I don't want to be a person that judges others if they don't do it. But I will talk about it when I have the opportunity and when the person is someone that I feel I can speak to without them being angry, without them feeling that I'm judging them. Yes.
I publish a magazine that has stories of other individuals who became vegan. And the reason why I think that's so important is so that everybody understands veganism and vegans are not a cult. They are everyday people, all shapes and sizes, all religions, all nationalities, and all ages. We are the world. We are vegan. And I do that through also a class that I give, Cooking with Compassion, because my motto is cook with compassion and eat without violence. Food has become so much more to me now that I'm vegan. Before I wasn't so into food. I guess my body was already telling me that animal food was not for me. Once I became vegan and I've discovered all these different arrays of fruits and vegetables that I can now eat, and everything that I used to cook before I was vegan, I still cook now. And I have one, I go and do tabling, and I promote the Red and Green Veg Fest here in Albuquerque, where I bring in speakers, do cooking demos and things like that for people. One time I was at Jewish Community Center doing a tabling event for health, and I had brought some tofu scramble, and this young lady came over to me and she goes, "What is that?" And I said, "Tofu scramble." And she goes, "Oh, I don't like tofu scramble." I said, "Well, you don't have to have it. There's other stuff that you could try." And she goes, "But I want to try it." I'm like, "Okay, well, you could try it." And I said, "Well, you know, there's a garbage can right there. If you don't like it, you could just spit it out." So this was her face, and I wish I had a camera then at that time. She went, "This is delicious." And I said, "Thank you." So I encourage others by doing cooking demos, through publications, through my podcasts, and through tabling, and even holding protest signs when we need to.
The ways I encourage others to be vegan, just through example, just by being healthy and showing people the benefits of it, and then just exposing the truth of what happens, telling people, "Hey, did you know that this happens?" Through my activism, we show footage of animal agriculture, and the industries and the media don't want us to see these, so just educating people. I'm not gonna force it on, even though I want a vegan world, but what I can do is educate people, and with that, they have the tools then to make their own decisions, and hopefully a decision to go vegan.
The way I like to share the vegan message is through beauty. My life is about beauty, creating beauty through the food, preparing it nicely, painting the food, kind of, you know, all the different colors, red and yellow and purple, and paintings of different kinds, like also flowers and landscapes. And music, of course, and making the house beautiful, the living space we're living in, making it beautiful, and so it's like sweet. It's really sweet.
I encourage others to consider and reduce their animal product intake through my outreach in schools and at festivals. I think that it's really important to meet people where they are so that they feel empowered to act in any way and capacity that they're capable of in the moment. In my advocacy, I talk to students quite a bit about how important it is in order to have a future of life on this planet for us to significantly reduce the amount of animal products that we're consuming so that we're able to have a thriving planet for all of us to live on. Starting small and recognizing the power that you have and the difference that you can make in just one meal a day to start, and then incrementally changing over time as much as you can with the foods that you have access to is incredibly important.
Being a vegan activist for this long, I have had the opportunity to try out all kinds of different techniques to share information and inspire. In college, there was a lot of, I would go ahead and say, angry protesting, where we were really trying to kind of shove these ideas in the faces of folks. And it did work for some people, I have to say, but I did learn over the years that the majority of people, it did not. Most people don't like being told what to do, and most people don't like having things shoved in their face. Most people also don't like to change their mind or change habits. So it's this really challenging balance of figuring out how can I share some really important information with people that I know can improve the lives of animals, can improve the environment, and would be better for them. So that's a journey I have been on for all of these years. And I have learned that a more positive, friendly approach has worked better in my experience. It's trying to have those conversations. It's sharing information online and social media. It is screening documentaries that are very difficult to watch, having good positive conversations afterwards, asking questions, and encouraging people to watch and read information that's really difficult. You know, learning about the truth behind how animals are raised and slaughtered for food is very difficult. It's painful, it's traumatic, but it's an important part of the food system that most people don't know. And I have learned over the 20 plus years of being vegan and a vegan advocate that a lot of people, once they do learn, want to make a change. They realize, I don't want to contribute to this. I don't want to participate in this system. And they're grateful for learning that. And so that's a part that I want to play. I also want to share that way with others, but just like with most things, there are many different ways of reaching out to people. And that's one of the things I also appreciate about the vegan movement is, you know, there's the Animal Liberation Front, folks that are standing out in the streets holding up TVs showing factory farm footage out, you know, in centers and on college campuses. There are vegan organizations that are leafleting and sharing information and tabling at events. So there's this really wide spectrum, and I think that that's a really great way to reach a variety of different people. So we all have a different role to play, and it's important to find what fits you, and I have been able to find that for me, and that has been a really positive, friendly, not shaming, not guilting people into believing what I believe. What's interesting is that the majority of people that come to the table when we're tabling are omnivores. And so they may not be interested in going 100% all the way. My goal is for people to encourage people to consume the least amount of animal products as possible. Ultimate goal, none. But if I can do something to help them consume the least amount possible, I'm going to do that. The majority of people that are ready to go in 100% are already kind of mentally on that path, and they're already ready. They just want the information and the resources. So we're kind of figuring out, as I'm having this conversation with someone that comes up to the table, I'm sort of figuring out where are they coming from, what's their goal, and how can I meet them and hopefully encourage them to go completely vegan. But I have to see where they're coming from. And I can usually pick up on that. The person that's like, okay, I just saw this documentary. I don't want to participate in animal cruelty anymore. And I really like that it's also really healthy. Can you help me transition? Yes, here we go. Do this, this, and this. And guess what? In 4 weeks, you can be totally free of all animal products. You're going to be feeling great. It's going to be amazing. You're going to be cooking for yourself. You're going to be knowing exactly how to order out. When you go shopping, you're going to know how to read the labels. You've got this. But there's some other people that are like, I've never had tofu or lentils in my entire life. How do I even do this? The approach is going to be a little bit different. And those are the people I really try to get to sign up for our newsletter, because those are the folks that we're giving these like really simple basic tips on. You've never had tofu, here's how to prepare it so that it's actually delicious. You've never tried lentils, you've got to try lentil tacos. I know it sounds crazy, but try some tacos without cheese. We want people to consume the least amount of animal products as possible. We definitely are always encouraging that fully plant-based is the way to go, that has the most benefits for health reasons, for animal welfare, for the environment. So we kind of offer these steps and make these suggestions, but we're always saying, you know, this is absolutely the end goal, and this is the way to go. And especially once you get there, it's really quick and easy. And you know, when you're going to the restaurant and you order, please, I want to make sure there's no meat, dairy, eggs in this. Can you check? Can you confirm? So it just gets easier and easier when you start shopping, cooking for yourself, ordering for yourself when you're out, just making it really clear, cut, and easy.
A very effective way of approaching others to become vegan has been through street activism with the Anonymous for the Voiceless. I find that an extremely effective tool. It's an organization that has an installation that is called The Cube of Truth, where half of the activists who meet up to do this street activism would stand in a cube formation showing slaughterhouse footage on a TV screen to the general public, and the other half talk to the people that actually approach or stand in front of the monitor, talk to them about what they see and what it means, and if they have ever seen footage like that, which is a very good way of breaking the ice in the first place.
So there are kind of a lot of ways that I kind of work at it, and they all at like spreading veganism and talking about veganism. And I guess like probably the most obvious one for me is just kind of posting that I am, not being afraid to talk about it. Like very much if somebody wants to talk about it, if somebody wants to make a dumb PETA meme, if somebody wants to make a plants feel pain thing, I don't shy away from it. I just convey that conversation to them. And I'm willing to have it. And the difficulty is it's like, I never really know how effective that is. Like how much of what I say is planting a seed. It's so hard to pin down a metric of, did it work? There've been a number of things like doing kind of the posting on Facebook saying, hey, this is bad, or posting on any of the socials and saying this is bad. It's had slight effectiveness. A lot of people talk about being more conscientious of the things. Having those direct conversations, people are generally more conscientious of things. Telling people that I won't eat with them if they're eating the bodies of animals has been fairly effective, at least at, I guess, saving wholesale lives. I guess like at the end of the day, that's what's important. I guess is like just if somebody's not eating an animal, it means that an animal gets to live, you know, which is important. Gone out, done activism, done those sorts of things, which I enjoy, and I enjoy the process of convincing other vegans to think about the way they interact with others more seriously too, and so they can kind of behave in this same similar way. Doing that with cubes of truth, holding up signs, going to protests, those sorts of large-scale activities where you really get to like interact with other vegans, other activists, other people who've like, I've been vegan 6 weeks. Tell me what I can do more. Tell me what you've found successful, what you haven't found successful, the laundry list of things. And I guess that's helpful in its own way. Keeping accountability in online spaces of people who are like, I'm thinking of not being vegan for X, Y, or Z reason, kind of dialoguing with them about why they are thinking those things, what emotions they're feeling. And I guess that's important too. I guess it's effective, but it's hard to say. Like I can't read the hearts of others. I can just read my own. So within the context of direct action everywhere, so I got involved with this organization because in other organizations, sometimes picketing and pamphleting and doing those sorts of things seems like there's no real like goal to it. There's no ends. You just sort of do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it. And you hope that at the end of the day, something happens. But what I really hope to accomplish, especially working with and learning from DXC, is like, okay, how does this turn into the law? How does this turn into social change? How can I work with other social change groups to make this, rather than just some personal dinner table conversation, into something that affects, the world? Something that doesn't just rely on me discussing and breaking my back and doing what I can to just get one more person to not eat one more animal. And it's more like, okay, how can we fix a system that has normalized this activity for so long that the discussion of it causes confusion rather than causing clarity? Like, well, why wouldn't I eat pigs? Why wouldn't I eat cows? And kind of broaching it in the direction of now I'm getting involved in something that like I know that there's a goal, there's an end, there's a finish line that I don't have to cross simply by not handing out that last flyer, but rather by being like, okay, once this legislation gets passed, once these lives are saved, actual tangible physical lives that you can hold in your arms, rather than hypothetical lives that you save via statistics that you can't just put into a spreadsheet.
What I would really love to do here is to pass along a personal invitation. If you're plant-based, vegan, or into climate change, I really would like to invite you to help us in our mission to find the ways that we can help inspire our friends and loved ones to embrace a different lifestyle, to come along and try being plant-based, vegan, and to do it for their own health. I have had so much frustration trying to inspire my friends, loved ones, people around me to do something that will help them and help the planet and help the animal situation. We've launched this Million Healthy Lives scoreboard. Scoreboard that's driven by a very simple one question, multiple choice question survey that will take you less than a minute to answer. So if you would please come to wedidit.health and answer the simple questions so we can drive the scoreboard. Imagine being able to show the world that there are over 1 million people who are thriving with much better health, who are protecting the planet by changing their lifestyle. Because I really believe, and I hope you agree, that if we can show the scoreboard to the world, people will pay attention and people will say, wow, you know, I don't have to suffer with type 2 diabetes. Here's somebody who lost 200 pounds and reversed diabetes. And I've seen stories where people have actually been scheduled for bypass surgery and instead they changed their diet and didn't have to get bypass surgery anymore. And not only they didn't have to have surgery, they were healthier and stronger than they could have ever been after surgery. So please join us, wedidit.health, answer the simple one question survey. Let's show the world that this is real, that this isn't just some wacko doctor in a cave somewhere in the Pacific Ocean making this stuff up. This is real, this is evidence-based, and let's provide the other piece of evidence that's missing. The piece of evidence being that there's lots and lots of people like you and me thriving by just simply changing what we eat and enjoying it and feeling so great. So thank you for that. I look forward for you to be on the scoreboard. It's really simple.